can see it now. Just please put it full screen. There we go. Thank you very much. Now you can proceed, ladies and gentlemen. Please a big applause, un fuerte aplauso.
Thank you. Then we start again. Now you can see my screen. Well, first of all, thank you very much to the organizers for giving Foss and me this opportunity to explain about our solutions and how those can be applied in the rendering industry. My name is Poul Simonsen. I'm the Global Meat Industry Manager at Foss in Denmark. Foss is a Danish company, so I'm speaking now from Denmark. Here's the agenda for my presentation. First, I'll give you a short introduction to Foss, the company I work for. Then I'll present the solutions that we offer to the rendering industry. I will also present a couple of customer cases, so you can see how some of your colleagues use our solutions. And finally, if time allows, I would like also to go through a couple of examples of how you can calculate the value of controlling the process with NARA solutions. But first, a little bit about Foss. Foss is a company established in 1956 by Mr. Niels Foss, the gentleman you see on the picture. And also today, it is the Foss family which 100% owns the company. He started in 1956 by developing a moisture analyzer for grain so that the farmers could measure the moisture content in the grain at the time of harvest. Later, Foss moved into dairy and wine and also the meat and feed and grain and so on. And at this photo here, or slides here, you see some photos of some of the solutions that we have launched throughout the years. Foss is always looking into new technologies to see if they can bring our customers advantages and benefits. And we spend a lot of time on research and development. Roughly 10% of our annual sales value is used for R&D activities. And we have roughly 350 engineers and scientists in our research and development department. We also work with external partners. We have international universities we work with. And none the least, we are listening a lot to our customers and their needs and challenges, and to see if this can give us ideas to new solutions to develop. Foss has a global presence. We have our head office in Denmark. That is the number one you see here. That's where we have our central R&D facilities and the overall administration of Foss. We are also in Poland, where we have our software hub. We have some years ago invested in a company in Hungary, which is in biotechnology. Then we are also in the US, in Francisco, with a software hub. And we are also in China with a production facility in Suzhou, west of Shanghai. There we produce some of the solutions that we offer. On sales and service-wise, all the countries you see here marked with a dark blue color, that's where Foss has its own sales and service subsidiaries. And this is 28 countries around the world. The ones marked with a light blue color is where we are represented with distributors. So as you can see in Mexico, we have our own setup. And I know that with you today, we have our managing director from Foss in Mexico attending your conference. So if you, after this presentation, have some questions related to Foss, you can contact Francisco Casaño. Foss is developing solutions for agriculture and for processing of agricultural products. And you see here the customer segments where we operate. We are in raw milk testing. We are in dairy. So dairy means not besides milk testing also. So milk powder, cheese, butter, and so on. We are in grain and oilseed. We are in wine and beer. We are in meat and rendering, which we're going to hear more about today. We are in feed and forage, and also we are working in commercial laboratories with our solutions. And then we have what we call other industries, where we always are looking for new industries we can move into. We have, for instance, now also in sugar industry and in palm oil with our solutions. That was a short introduction to FOSS. And as I said before, FOSS is a family-owned company and has an annual sales of roughly around $350 million US. Let's look into how our solutions can be applied in the rendering industry. I know you are experts in rendering, so I don't need to explain the process as such for you because you know very well. But I'll just very quickly run through a typical process. Here it is for meat and bone meal, MBM. So when the raw material comes in to the left, sometimes you need to take it to a crusher, especially if there are many bones. And it goes into the cooker. And after the cooker, we will have it going to a pressing and drying process. And in the screw press, the fat, the liquid part, will be separated from the dry part. And the wet part will go to the centrifugal separator, where again the solids will be separated from the fats and oils. The refined oil ends up typically in a tank, and while the solids will be transferred back to the cooker and go through the process again. After that, where the product is still very hot, it goes into a cooling phase, and the dry press cake must be cooled down to avoid the meal be spoiled and contaminated. So it's important to get the cooling down quickly. After that, the dry and cooled product goes to the milling, typically hammer mill, to make sure we get particles down to the size we want, so it can be used in the feed industry and so on. After the milling, it goes to the sieve, and what we see is that the sieve typically has a grid with a 2 millimeter size. So any parts larger than 2 millimeters will then be returned back and go through the milling process again. After this, we basically have the final product, and some setups you will have a hopper which pumps the final product into silos if you have the possibility to separate it into different protein categories, or it goes straight for packing and storage. That's basically the process. Then the question is, okay, where is it then? There are some points in this process where you need or would like to check things. Well, the first point, we have heard that our customers would like to do some process control is after the cooling process. So after drying and cooling, and it's the moisture content which is important here to measure. If you control the moisture, you also control more or less the fat and protein content. So moisture is important at this point. The other point is after the sieve, where you have the final products. And here is typically the protein content, but also fat and ash that are measured. Protein is important because protein is normally used for segregating the final meal. And if you have silos like indicated here, you can have different protein meal content in each silo. So you could have a 40%, a 50 or 60%, and then later on when you have to fill a truck, you can then blend according to what you need to have a final protein content in your material. As said, we have the moisture, we have the segregation, we then also have the blending. That's also an area where you can measure, and we have the check the oil. So that's the 4 areas where we see that our customers ask us for solutions for their process control. Let's just go through the elements or parameters each one and see what is the value element here. The moisture. By controlling the moisture, you improve process performance. And so if the moisture content is too high, it can result in sticky material, so you can't pump it, and you would then clog up the meal in the pipes. So then you have to stop the whole process and clean the pipes. On the other hand, if the moisture content is too low, you're actually losing weight and thereby volume that you can sell. So there's a wish to control the moisture content. The moisture content is also important for storage, for better transport. And as said before, increased yield by optimizing drying process is also, of course, a benefit of this. Another parameter is protein. Protein is the driving parameter in the trade. Protein is, or meal is sold based on protein content. And if you can produce closer to the specifications, you have a good situation. And we can help you with that with our solutions. And controlling the protein also gives you a consistent product quality. It can also help you to reduce rework and, of course, to, in the end, have more happy customers because they get the product from you that they want. Oil and fats. By controlling the oil and fats, you can also capture the maximum value of oil. And an increasing trend of the oil content in the final meal indicates that the production process, that means your pressing phase, should be checked as oil has a higher value when sold separately instead of being part of the meal product. And finally, we have ash. Ash is important for rendering customers, especially those who use your product to produce pet food. If the ash content is too high, it can have a negative effect on the digestibility of the dog or cat, which is going to have the pet food one day. So ash is very important to control. FOSS offers 3 NIR solutions for rendering companies. We have 2 solutions which can be used in the lab, and we have 1 solution for in-line analysis. One of the solutions for use in the laboratory is called NIRS DA1650. We have what we call global calibrations for fat, protein, moisture, and ash for most meal products. And typically when using this one, the sample to be checked is taken after the drying and sieving. So on the final product. The big brother or sister of this DA1650 is called NIRS DS3. It has a wider scanning range, and thereby we can also obtain information about more parameters using this solution. So fat, protein, moisture, ash, as with DA. But on top, we can also measure the color of the sample. We have a color module in this solution, and also other parameters. And for companies who use the fat or the oil from the process for energy, parameters like free fatty acids, ash, phosphorus, and sulfur are often important to measure. Again, here goes that the samples for the DS3 is typically taken after the drying and sieving process. And finally, we have our solution for in-line analysis, ProFOS 2. For this one, we typically see our customers are interested in following the content of fat, of protein, of moisture, and ashes. And as you saw before, there are different places that such solutions may be used. It could be after drying and cooling point. It could be at the segregation point, so after the sieve, and also for blending. So relating those solutions you just saw to the chart I showed before, you see here where the Profos can fit in. So after the drying and cooling to check the moisture content, at the segregation point, so after the sieves, when you have the final product, to segregate your meal based on its protein content. Or you can have one after your silos, so that you secure with this solution that you blend to the protein content that you need to deliver to your customer. When we look at our two solutions for laboratory use, they can be used at the place you see here. The typical one is to take samples of the final product of the sieve, again for controlling the protein content in the product, and thereby to secure that you segregate as you want. You can also take samples after the silos to use it to control the blending, so you reach the final blend with the right protein content in your trucks or in your big bags. And of course, you can also take samples from the oil tank to check the oil. We have what we call a gold reflector solutions, which we use when we are checking oil with the DS3. So that sums up how and where our solutions can be used in a rendering process. And what I would like to show you are just two customer cases of where our solutions are used. The first one is a case in Italy from AgriGlobal. AgriGlobal is a part of a group producing poultry products. They have their own rendering facility. And at this facility here, Cesena it's called, they have 3 production lines. They have a production line for meat and bone meal. They have one for feather meal and for blood meal. And you see the capacity per hour here on this slide here. They have decided to install a Profos after the sieve. So when they have the final product before it goes into the hopper, and you see this Profos installed here on the picture to the right. It's the identical installation point for also the 2 other Profoses they have in the plant. And what they have achieved by this is that they certify the finished products for its content of moisture, protein, and ash based on what they constantly see of information from the Profos of that meal products content. They also use information to drive the dryer efficiently, as they know what the relationship should be between the parameters, and so they can use this indirectly to also adjust the drying process. And then they have in their lab one of the other food scan analyzers you saw to validate the Profos, but also to check some other parameters that they need to analyze in their final product. This company at Co-op also have another plant, Michelangelo Sant'Angelo, where they produce only meat and bone meal. And to the right, you see 2 lines, each of them where Profos is installed for in-line analysis. And what they use the information for is the following. They, by knowing what's in each of those pipes of meal, they can mix the 2 meal streams to achieve the low ash content or whatever they want in their final product. And then they can load the silos at different ash and protein contents based on how the market, what the market demands from them. And then of course they, in the end, achieve consistency in their final product for the content of ash, protein, fat, and moisture. Also, this plant has in its lab FOS, in this case DS3 solution, which they use to validate the Profoses, but also to check some other parameters in the final product. And then finally, I show you how you can calculate the value of using such solutions in your process. What I'm going to show you now is an example from Australia, and where I have changed the Australian dollar into euros and US dollars value. First thing is meat and bone meal moisture savings. At this customer, they say an increase of 1% in moisture content per ton of meat and bone meal would give the following return, namely the sales value of 1 kilo bone meal is in this case $0.45 US. And by controlling the moisture, adding 1% more moisture into the product, still being within the spec, they can have a daily gain of 600 kilos based on their 60-ton production. So that means they have 600 kilos more to sell. And with a value of what you see above, that gives you a daily gain of 240 euros, or US dollars 270, based on being able to add 1% more moisture in your product. And on an annual basis, that is a gain of 67,500 US dollars. And this is for controlling moisture content after the cooling. So from testing moisture content from samples in our solutions, you can monitor whether it would be necessary to adjust the heating process. Too much heating results in over drying and consequently loss of meat and bone meal volume. Another thing is the protein savings or gain. As you know, meat and bone meal protein is valued on percent of protein. So the higher the protein content, the higher the value of the end products. Here's a price example, again from Australia. There we have that protein with a 46.5% protein content has a value of 368 euros per ton. If it is 1% higher, so 47.5%, the value is 375.6 euros per ton. So that means a difference per point of 7.6 euro per ton. And based on this daily production of 60 tons, the increased value of being able to supply 1% higher protein content in your final product can be calculated as you see here. There's a daily gain of 456 euros per day. And on a yearly basis, it ends up to 114,000 euros, or roughly 131,000 US dollars. So a lot of money when you can control the protein content in your final product. So for controlling protein by testing samples in the NARA solutions, you can monitor whether it would be necessary to lift the protein content, and you could do that by blending to reach final targets, and thereby a final target of the meat and bone meal production you have. So this is a way we prove to customers that there is a way with our solutions to increase value of their production. So in this case here, when you want to put all this together, you'll see that the moisture control, where you add 1% more moisture, gives you a yearly gain of 60,000 euros. The increased protein content by 1% gives you a gain of 114,000 euros per year. And when you have those NIR solutions, you do not need to go to the external lab, or at least you can reduce the external lab costs. So in this case here, they saved 5,800 euros on external lab. So in total, they had a yearly savings, or you can say gain in value of their production, of nearly 180,000 euro, or more than 200,000 US dollars. And this, if you compare it with what would it then cost to invest in those solutions, but that would give you a payback time of less than 1 year if you only choose one of our NAR solutions for lab, or even if for inline. So there's a lot of money to gain here by controlling your production and final products with NAR solutions, at least from the cases you have seen here. That is what I had planned to explain during this nearly half-hour presentation. And I would therefore ask if there are any questions you would like to ask me, and which I'll be happy to answer. Are there any questions, or has everything been explained, hopefully in a clear way? I don't know how the sound came out at your end, but I hope it came out nicely.
We don't have any questions. Thank you very much. Damas y caballeros, por favor, un fuerte aplauso.
Good.
Please, ladies and gentlemen,
Then
a
let's say
round
thank
of
you very much,
applause.
and I wish you a continuous good congress.